concept of scale up? What is this that we keep talking about? Scaling up, scale up, right? So let's really understand this. And this is not to put anybody in a negative or a positive way, but if you look at that curve, you see three categories of companies. One of those are which are startups, right? Then there is a scale up company, and then what I call as a screw up. I mean, it's not necessarily in a negative way of the sense of the term, but just to indicate that as an organization grows, it goes through its own sets of challenges. And typically, if you look at it, the startup companies are the smaller companies, and the mice is more or less referring to the size of the company more than anything else, right? And that's what you're really talking about. And here we are talking about companies that are between about a crore rupees to about 7 crores. It's defined in US dollar, $1,000,000. But at the end of the day, all of us understand that. Now, somebody might have a question. What do you talk about companies that are less than 150K? I really call them as companies in incubation phase, more or less, right? They are at that stage where they need to really figure out their business model. They have to figure out their customers, their segment and space, and then they really become an entity which you can really call a startup that can really go and get into that space. And what you really see is different between all of these is what changes in terms of who takes the decisions, who are the people who are implementing the decision, who drive the organization, and what elements and processes are in place. And as we will all realize and understand, and we see this so very often, that as an organization grows, the situation, the complexity within which it operates changes rapidly. And this is where the biggest challenge comes in, because for an organization, as you keep growing, whatever helped it to grow to this level, that if a company grew from just about a crore of rupees of revenue to 3 or 5 crores of revenue, now whatever helped you to grow from 1 crore to 5 crore doesn't necessarily help you to grow from that level to the next level. From that level onwards, every point of time, there is a reinvention, literally a reinvention of how an organization grows. And the same thing keeps applying, that once you grow to a $20 million to go to a 70 million or $100 million, and it keeps going on like that. So what really happens is that an organization needs to reinvent itself many times over. A lot of organizations who have gone through these growth purges will look back and might not necessarily point out the amount of changes that happened, but this is a key element that you have to look at. And what our focus right now during this particular session is obviously to talk about what and how companies can scale up in that middle space. Now, some of the companies will spill over in the startup and scale up, as well as from scale up to the larger company. And that's fine, because it's not just purely defined by revenue numbers, they're also defined by what drives your organization and the other elements there. So this is a fluid kind of a definition. This is not a definition that is absolutely hard line drawn on paper, but keep this mindful of this fact that this is what we're really talking about as scale up. Now, we have heard about the lean startup. That's a model which was popularized by a fantastic book that came out in that space. And then ultimately what you have is an agile scale up. As an organization grows, it has to be agile, and it has to scale up. And what really happens is this is the gap that people need to break out from the lean startup mode to get into the agile scale up mode. And that is where the maximum challenges really occur. And this is exactly the space that this is what is known as scaling up as an organization that really focused upon. And where did this concept really come out from? This came out from a book that is called Scaling Up. You'll see that book behind me out here. It's a book that is published by Vern Harnish. It's a winner of several book awards, about 7 awards internationally, in terms of what is the quality of the content that you really find out here. And this is the whole concept that many companies start up. There are obviously hundreds and hundreds of companies that start up, but very few scale up. And the biggest challenge, a lot of them start up, remain stuck on that stage, are unable to grow there. So what is it that one could do? Now, all the people who registered for this session received an email from me today that gave you the barriers to scaling up. And those are very 3 important barriers that you can keep in mind as a starting point. Examine your organization. Are those 3 barriers impacting you, your infrastructure, your leadership development, as well as in terms of marketing effectiveness? Look at that. And there are some thoughts and ideas that you can utilize and apply also in your business. So that's something just as a key starting point that I wanted to give to all of you before we even came for the session. Moving on, these are the other 2 books that this gentleman Vern Harnish has written. And who's Vern Harnish? Vern Harnish is the person who actually founded a very well-known organization that is called EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. So he started this organization, which has become a global organization right now. He exited that and he created another entity called Scaling Up. So it's an entity that is focused upon helping mid-market companies to scale and grow. And today, Scaling Up operates across the 6 continents with 200 plus coaching partners all across the world and with more than about 2,700 active clients. It's a very large organization, and it has obviously built upon very, very solid credentials and success stories like the one that you heard from Girish. There are literally hundreds and hundreds of such stories of companies all across the world who are similar size and who have benefited from this. Now, I'm going to take you through an example of another company, and which is a quote that is coming in from this gentleman, and we'll see his name very soon, that scaling up a business requires precisely the kind of discipline and focus which is detailed in Vern's book. And who's the gentleman? This gentleman is Scott Farquhar. He is the co-founder of Atlassian, a company that's based in Australia. Now, Scott and his 50-member team at that point of time in 2005 attended Vern's workshop back there in Australia when Vern conducted it then. Do you know the valuation of Atlassian today? It's valued at $45 billion. That is the value of Atlassian today as we speak. And all along, they have credited the benefits that they have realized by utilizing the principles and the concepts in all along their own journey. And that helped them to grow from a 50-member team, from a very small organization, to have grown into a massive mammoth valuation of $45 billion. And this is exactly the kind of stories that are there for each of you to figure out, is that the journey that you would like to take through this path right now? And ultimately, what is that journey all about? The journey is about that big, hairy, audacious goal. We heard Girish speaking about it, right? A big, hairy, audacious goal is that peak of the mountaintop, is the peak of the Everest. That is an organization that you want to reach as an entity. That is what you aspire to do. Now, that time frame might be a longer time frame. In the tech space, that might be about 10, 12 years. In the traditional businesses, that might be about 20, 25 years. It's a big, hairy, audacious goal, right? That's a term that was coined by Jim Collins. And then along the path, what you have are benchmarks that you set for yourself. Like you say, you might have a 3 to 5 year plan, you might have a 1 year plan, and then there is a focus upon what you do in each quarter. Now, as a framework, scaling up helps you to build all of these elements together and stitch them together into a path that can lead you along that journey to where you want to go. And that's what exactly this whole journey is about. What is your ambition? If you start defining that out with clarity and then putting in place all the pieces that can take you there, that is exactly what success really looks like in the longer run. So what are the three things that are really required? There are three disciplines that are really required for any organization to be able to succeed. And what are these? The first is to focus and be clear upon what are your priorities, right? That means as far as an organization is concerned, everybody in the organization, there has to be an alignment about what are the priorities, what is important for the organization, what is important in the short run, what is important today. And that is very, very important. And that is something, if you ensure you have an alignment, then what you really require is the data and the metrics that will ensure that you are able to measure what and how you're doing, so that you'll have clarity as well as foresight in terms of how are you moving in what direction that you want to go. And then subsequently, what you really require are the meeting rhythms that help you to take better and faster decisions. So it's not about just about a conceptual framework that you create in an Excel sheet or in a PPT and put it up. No, it's all about focusing on these three elements: the priorities, ensuring you have the right data and metrics, and the right meeting rhythm that really converge together to get you where you want to go. And what does it all result into? It basically results into creating a routine that sets you free. It's actually an oxymoron, right? It looks like that. A routine that sets you free. The beauty of this thing is a lot of founders and companies and people who utilize these tools, and I can give you several examples. We won't have time today, but when we do the workshop series, I'll give you specific CEOs of companies who have been running their companies by simply spending 1 day a week on their business, right? And the rest of the time, they are focusing on what else can they do to go beyond what they're doing today, right? And that is a fantastic element that they have been able to put in place because they got those three things right, right? And this is the priorities, the metrics, as well as the cadence. So all of these three things is what really sets you free. So at the end of the day, it's all about how can you reduce by 80% the time that you take to manage what you do today. It's all about how do you ensure you land up doing more market-facing activities. Ask Most of you all can ask us this question today: where does a lot of energy get expended today? It's mostly inside your business. It's mostly upon the things, something needs to be fixed. There is an issue with a customer. There is an issue with a supplier. There is a problem that I've done. All the energy gets sucked in by focusing on internal activities. It's only when you start focusing on market facing activities that you can really, really get into the next stratosphere. And then what is really important to be able to do that is first to ensure that everybody in the organization, right down to the last person, is aligned and on the same page. And that is very important. And a lot of organizations, there's a lot of clarity about strategy at the top level. The CEO knows it, the top senior leadership team knows it. But as it starts percolating down, nobody has a clue. Everybody is running after different priorities, and that doesn't really help anybody. So what you really create are these sets of tools. And this is one of the first tools that I'm just showing with you, which is called a vision summary. It becomes a summarization about what is important for the organization. What are the core values? What are the purpose? What is the brand promise? What is the BHAG? And what are the goals that we really have? And then what are the priorities and what are we measuring up? So it all captures that into a single document, which is then disseminated across the organization so that everybody is crystal clear that this is what has to be aligned to. And this is exactly the first kind of a tool that we are talking about out here. As we go along, what do you get as a result of all this? You get the opportunity to actually double your cash flow. You get the opportunity to multiply your profitability by 3x, and you get the opportunity to drive your valuation up by 10x. Right now, this might seem a dream right now, but I'll actually share an example of this situation with you right at the end. And at the whole process, you as a founder, you as a CEO, you as an owner, you can enjoy the climb rather than having the grind of needing to go and do those things, day after day. So you can enjoy the climb, you can enjoy your experience of growing your business. So this is the example I'm going to be talking about. Everybody talks about what a fantastic company Apple is, but I'm going to talk about a very different company that is called Apple Tree. Now, Apple Tree, and this is John Ratcliffe, the CEO and founder of Apple Tree. Now, John is been in a very, very mundane business, right? He's in the call center business. Can you imagine of all the things, which is such a mundane business today, and that also in the US, right? And he runs a call center. He used to run a call center business. Over a period of time, Apple Tree acquired 22 companies globally and grew, and he exited his company on an amazing valuation. Now, let us really look at what is it that Apple Tree did uniquely different. Now, Apple Tree, obviously being in the call center business, they had a massive attrition problem, right? Their attrition, their people attrition was 200%. That means every 6 months, their entire workforce used to rotate. And I'm sure, some people in many industries might empathize with this, but that is the reality in this space, right? And from that point of time, by implementing a lot of practice, and again, we'll talk about this when we do the workshop, what are the things that Apple Tree implemented in their business, and I'll share those details with you. They were able to bring down their attrition down to 18% from 200%, which is basically, right, a massive 10x kind of a change. Their profitability, because the call center business is not a profitable business, their profitability was just 4%. From 4%, they were able to drive up their profit to 21% in their business as it is, which is 14x earnings they were able to change, right? And that also by acquiring companies, by integrating them and by making them successful. Just imagine how difficult it is to grow your own business. Now you're acquiring businesses, you're driving all of these things, and you're driving such a lot of practices that have helped to make a change. And then he exited that business at a phenomenal valuation. And then obviously he's doing something else right now. He's incidentally the CEO now of Scaling Up Coaches, right? So he actually now runs the Scaling Up coaching business worldwide, interestingly. So this is an example of Apple Tree itself as it is. So the key element that really comes across is when it comes here, the interesting part is that all of us have the answers. All the answers are available with us. The problem is not with the answers. The problem is, it's the question that we do not know. The question is more critical, and the question is the missing link out here. And this is the real important element that we have to keep in mind. Now, this is a favorite slide of mine because it really amply demonstrates that when you look at a market, this is exactly like all of those black eggs that you see. That's exactly like those black marbles. It's exactly like most companies are. They're indistinguishable from each other. If a customer looks at them,
You can only see this is A, B, C. Is there any difference between them? Not at all. Now you see that blue one that stands out. That is the positioning that one has to focus upon. How can you create this kind of positioning for yourself in the market that you can stand out from the rest, that you are offering substantial value, that the customers start coming to you rather than you start going to customers. And there are ways and mechanisms to do that. And that's exactly what these tools and processes are all about. How can you get there? So it all follows what is actually Jim's Collins methodology, right? It's all about good to great. How do you really go from good to great? And what are the three things that get you there? You need to have disciplined people that you can achieve through coaching. You need to have disciplined thought that comes through learning, and you have to have disciplined action that comes in through technology. So these are the three things that you really need to do to be able to make that move, to be able to become distinctive in your own market space, right? And there are four crucial decisions that one has to take in any organization. There are four pillars that really the entire scaling up process is based upon. And those four pillars are people, strategy, execution, and cash. And I'm going to just show you some of the tools under each of these that are available. We heard earlier Girish speaking about some of these tools, scaling up people, right? What is it that really comes out here? There are two fabulous tools that are really used out here, a functional accountability chart and a people accountability chart. And Girish made a reference to that some time back when he spoke about the benefit. Now, this is a fantastic way to drive clarity within the organization. A lot of places we land up with a lot of things that fall between the cracks because everybody's siloed in what they do. When you create a focus in terms of a functional and a process accountability, and then you have metrics that measure the impact and effectiveness and then connect it to the bottom line, to your P&L of your company, to your balance sheet of your company. When you start connecting the dots all the way there, this is what these tools really help you to do. And one of the things I've committed to is all the people who attend today's session will also get a full set of these documents which give you all these tools, right? So these all will be accessible and available to you. If you actually go and pick up the book, you can actually understand what you could do to even implement them if you want. So these are the things that you have to keep in mind, that this is the first tool that we really use in the people front. On a strategy front, right? What is key element is, can you state your strategy simply? Is it possible that one can talk what is the strategy in a simple terms as it is? So this is where it comes to a wonderful rule that is called the 770 rule. Now, a lot of people talk about how can we grow bigger in the market. I think the key question that we really should be looking at is, it is not about how can we have larger market share. It's about what can we have a larger profit share of the market, right? So the rule of 770 basically is, can we identify that 7% of the market that can help us to get a 70% share of the profitability of that segment? And this is a fantastic approach that one can take. And there is a lot of possibility. And I can again share examples of multiple companies that have achieved exactly this by focusing on specific elements of the market and being kings of that market. They really became the kings of that market. And because they became the kings, their profitability that they were able to drive was substantial. Now, isn't that a better situation to be in rather than having a bloated top line, but an absolutely pathetic or a negative, and then you are, in the red, right? It doesn't help anybody. So this is the 770 rule that one really figures it out. And that is something that gets you to this position again, this unique positioning that you can really achieve. And the tool that helps you to get there is something called a 7 strata. So it basically helps you to start completely redefining out in terms of all the elements of your strategy. Who are your core customers? What is your brand promise? What is your catalytic mechanism? Now, these are all concepts that you will see across a lot of books as well as media that you'll find all around you. But this put together is what makes the entire tool become so very powerful. So this is something which one can utilize to define a groundbreaking strategy that can change the course of what you do. Now, the third element is execution. Now, it's very, very important that no matter how great a strategy you might have, execution is the key. Like a lot of people say, you can create strategy, but execution is the key. Now, nobody from outside can come and execute inside your organization. It has to be executed by you and your team. But are there tools and processes that can help you there? Absolutely, yes. So one of the best tools that you really have out here is what is called a Rockefeller habit checklist. This is something which John F. Rockefeller really had as used as habits when he grew his business, Standard Oil, into one of the most valuable companies in the US for a very, very long time, right? And this is basically a distillation of those habits. What is it that one can do as an organization? And there actually are 10 habits and 4 elements in each habit. So there are in all about 40 habits that one can do. So there's a checklist. You can figure it out. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about this book of Atul Gawande, Dr. Atul Gawande, the Checklist Manifesto, right? Now, it's all about focusing on how can you use checklists to effectively get to the execution that you want to do, to get perfection, to get efficiency, to get outright. And this is exactly, and this is not about a process checklist. This is about an implementation checklist, what you can do to make sure that your organization moves there. And it's all about building in the meeting rhythms, right? How can you ensure that you have the right daily, weekly, monthly, and the quarterly meeting? If you set the right meeting rhythm in the same way, then ultimately the amount of time that you need to spend inside the business on meetings actually comes down if you set the right meeting rhythm, because you're focusing on the right thing at the right time and not wasting a lot of unnecessary time with one other stuff. So when you get these meeting rhythms right, you free up your people, you free up yourself to do much more. Now, there is only one thing that I'm going to give you. So the meeting rhythm start with daily, they go on to weekly, they go on to monthly, they go on to a quarterly, and then there is beyond that also an annual planning. Now, there is one element I'm going to give you as a takeaway, that focus upon whatever is your organization, whether you're a startup and all that, try to put in a daily meeting into your process. And what are the three things that you do in a daily meeting? Ask these three questions. What's up? What are the daily metrics that you have and how are you progressing on them? And if anybody is stuck on something, then the person should raise his hand and ask for help. Try this out. Do this every single day at an exactly the same time. You define a time, and no matter which part of the world anybody of your team members are, they have to be a part of this meeting. It's a stand-up meeting. You don't even have to sit down for this meeting. Typically, most organizations run this meeting just for between 7 to 10 minutes. That's it. Right? It's a very crisp meeting. It's focused on only three things. If there is anything, one thing that you want to take away from today's session, take this away, implement this in your organization, and you'll start seeing a sea change in the way that you're able to drive things as it is. Now, the fourth component we spoke about is scaling up cash. So in cash, what you're really talking about, how can you leverage your cash flows? How can you leverage each component of your balance sheet and turn it to your advantage? And there is a process that is really followed for this, which is also available as a tool set out here, which is called the cash acceleration cycle as it is. Right? So this is something that you can also utilize through the scaling up tools. And each of these can really drive what is the kind of profitability we are talking about, and to help you improve upon it as time goes by. So this is what it really comes down to, dear friends. It's all about the combination of having the right team and the right vision that can help you to go forward towards the goals that you want to set and achieve for yourself. And at the end of the day, it's all about being biased towards action. It's not about concepts. It's not about just frameworks. It's not just about some PPT or some Excel. It's all about focusing upon actions that can get you to where you want to go. Right? And this is where we come now to what is really Scaling Up Launchpad. So what is Scaling Up Launchpad? It's basically a series of 6 workshops. We are going to be doing this over 2 months. Each of the workshops is for 2.5 hours each. That means if you decide to participate, is a workshop which is you'll have to devote about 2.5 hours each. And it basically starts with an entire organization assessment that you do as it is. You also get copies of the Scaling Up book, because that is an important element that you have to have along with you to help you in your journey. We cover all the important concepts that are covered in the Scaling Up book as it is. There are also going to be breakout sessions for you to complete these tools in the meeting itself. So if you're attending along with your teams, you can actually create a breakout room. You'll sit there, and I, along with some of the other coaches, will come in and help you out wherever you get stuck so that you can complete your tools. You will have actionable outputs for yourself from each of these sessions. You will have a tangible, that is implementation that you can do in your organization. You'll ensure you'll have clarity on a one-page strategic plan. Now, please bear in mind, a lot of these tools are iterative tools. It's not that you'll do them once and lock them and forget them. They're live document. You keep iterating them. So you might have at least a version 1 of these documents right now. And then obviously you have the option to engage with a coach subsequently. Like me, you can engage subsequently. And what it's all about. 2020 has been a challenge, but 2021 can be a new trajectory. So you need a launch pad to really take off to 2021. And that's what this workshop series is all about, where you as an organization can create a launch pad for yourself to launch yourself into 2021.